ranking member, the chairman of the subcommittee, said for this legislation and for the needed icebreakers in the Great Lakes. Those of us in the northern latitudes know the special and difficult challenges faced by those who keep the maritime transportation system operating during long, cold, icy winters. And certainly the Coast Guard should have expanded its Great Lakes icebreaking capability many years ago. And I'm glad you are prompting them to remedy the shortfall in icebreaking capability now. That means we also have to fund them so they can build the ships. Mr. Chairman, the polar regions also lack a necessary U.S. icebreaking capacity. As the Coast Guard moves forward this spring, I look forward to working with you to close the icebreaking capability gap in the Arctic and Antarctic, as well as the Great Lakes shortfall. The Coast Guard has 3 polar-class icebreakers. The less powerful decade-old Healy carries out the Arctic science missions and hopefully has many productive years ahead of it. Unfortunately, the 33-year-old and the 34-year-old Polar Star and Polar Sea, the Coast Guard's only Class 1 icebreakers, are nearing the ends of their useful lives. The vessels either need to be replaced or undergo major midlife retrofits. These vessels are the only U.S. vessels capable of breaking ice for the annual resupply of McAdoo Station, the U.S. research station in Antarctic. Unfortunately, the National Science Foundation has taken the ill-advised short-term view that it would be better to save a few dollars a day and charter foreign icebreakers that invest in U.S. assets that will assure long-term access to the McAdoo. The NSF is essentially following the path that many now bankrupt mortgage bankers took 3 or 4 years ago. The NSF is engaged in an interest-only, no-principle strategy that looks good in any single budget cycle. The NSF is foregoing its buying the less expensive services of foreign icebreakers, which break down most of the time. This looks good in any single budget cycle because it avoids making any capital investment. Without that investment, U.S. Class 1 icebreaking capability will be gone in a short number of years. As the ice in the Arctic Ocean recedes, if it does so, for longer periods during the summer, shipping in the Arctic will increase. With that increased maritime activity, the Coast Guard will need additional ice-capable vessels in the Arctic. Right now, the Coast Guard has no plan to meet these increased needs, again, because of lack of funding. The service is thinking about doing a study to establish the requirements, maybe if they had the money. As they think, the Polar Star and the Polar Sea sit idle at the docks in Seattle, one tied in a caretaker status and the other at sea only 30 days last year. Their crews haven't been to the Antarctic since 2006 and 2007, and the Coast Guard skills and actual ice operation are being kept alive only on the Healy. We need to get the Coast Guard to stop thinking and start doing. And I hope you'll work with me to address this polar icebreaking needs of the Coast Guard bill this year. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this up because this is a crucial issue of the Great Lakes as well as both the North and South Poles. And I thank you for the time and for yielding to the ranking member.
I thank the gentleman for those observations. He and I served on the Coast Guard subcommittee of the then Merchant Marine and Fisheries Committee when the Polar Sea and the Polar Star were launched. And you're right, I thought it was 30, but it was 33 years ago.
3 years ago.
But we both remember that on its maiden voyage, it got stuck in the polar ice.
That's right. That was an omen.
I remember talking with the gentleman at the time about this because we had then a 30-year-old icebreaker on the Great Lakes. Then it became a 40, then a 50-year-old icebreaker. And I'm certainly in sympathy. You know, the last glacier retreated 10,000 years ago. But as the gentleman from Alaska and our colleagues from Michigan both know, it makes a return engagement, stages a return every November, December, January in our part of the world. And we're feeling those effects. And in this competitive era, when coal has to move from the Powder River Basin to Lower Lake power plants in Michigan and Ohio and Illinois, the most efficient route is the Great Lakes. But one of those, the Paul R. Tregurtha was stuck in ice, and the icebreaker was on the lower lakes. So the Coast Guard sent these little harbor tugs up there. You know, they can keep a channel open, but they can't break the ice. That's the problem. And then our iron ore gets stuck up there. And sure, when the Soo locks are shut down about mid-January, because there's just too much ice to go through the locks, that's a different matter. But until then, and right now, and in March, when those channels need to be opened, it takes an icebreaker to do that. And we need one in the upper lakes and the lower lakes. We don't need one that the Coast Guard designed initially with machine guns and all the rest. What in heaven's name are they doing with guns? We're not going to shoot that ice. We need to break the ice. So they had to redesign it, and they've come back with, and the shipyard on the Michigan-Wisconsin border that builds these icebreakers still has orders out, still has steel at lower cost. We will get this icebreaker built for a much better price than we would have done on a simple initial order. Now, the gentleman from Michigan had his hand up. I recognize
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's been pretty well covered. I'm tempted to say that I remember when the Ice Age ended, but I'm not quite that old. Clearly, there's a huge need here, and I appreciate the effort here. We always try to save money in the wrong way, and it seems to me, in the government. And it's actually ended up costing companies, the public, money by not having adequate icebreakers. And so this is badly needed, and I certainly support it. I also, in response to previous comments about the National Science Foundation, I will defend them and their actions because they were given little choice. They had received ice-breaking service from the Coast Guard for years. Previous administration decided to end that and said the National Science Foundation had to pay for it out of their own budget, and they simply didn't have the money for it. So they picked the cheapest alternative, which was not the best, but they were forced into it. And I think we have to go back to the old system and let the Coast Guard provide the service they've always provided, but we have to make sure they have the right ships to do it too, and that's what this will do. So thank you very much for taking this up. And
I appreciate the gentleman's comments on the NSF. That troubled us a great deal, and as you remember, in the